Hi, Mike. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So what I like to do on this is I like to read the official bio, and
Okay.
that's the information that the guests send me. And then, of course, you'll have an opportunity to share anything else about yourself before we get going.
All right.
So our guest today is Michael Mata. He's born in Houston. You attended Texas Tech University, Sam Houston State University. You've been married for 19 years and y'all have 2 children. You're a sergeant and you've been on the Dallas Police Department for 27 years. 15 of those years are in patrol, a 4-year member of the Uniform Drug Task Force, 6 years as a defensive tactics instructor at the Dallas Police Academy. You worked 3 years in an undercover capacity in the Major Crimes Unit. You were a sergeant in the traffic DWI unit, 10 years as a member of the Dallas Police Association Executive Board, 7 years and currently the president of the Dallas Police Association. And that's the FOP law. I get it all. There's so many titles, but 716 Dallas Police Association. And as a former Dallas police officer, I want to thank you for all you do through the DPA to help us. We absolutely need people like you to keep us secure. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, I just really thank you for having me on. It's funny when you hear somebody read your bio, it seems like it hasn't been that long, but I guess it has been that long. And so, it's what we always like to tell young officers when they come in this department. There's so much you can do on this department if you really want to do it. If you want to stay in patrol your whole career, that's a great place to be. But there's so much you can do in large departments like this one here in Dallas. So just glad I had opportunities to do that.
And just to be fair, can you say officially how I should be introducing the Dallas Police Association Lodge 716? Can you get all of that out there for our listeners, please?
You hit it right there. The Dallas Police Association, FOP Lodge 716.
Yay. Yay. Thank you. Thank you.
Good job. Good job.
I was trying to think back to when I first met you, and it might have been before, but what the earliest memory I have is I had just promoted to lieutenant, and I was working some jobs because I wanted to buy a house because I had recently divorced. And you and I were working deep night somewhere on Channel 1 that I wasn't even familiar with. That's my earliest recollection of working with you. Do you remember that? That had been 23 years ago.
No, I definitely remember. That's the exact same time that I was going to say that we had a conversation that I, had an opportunity to talk to you more than just in passing, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
That was it. So yeah. And it was fabulous to see all of the things that you have done in the department. Like you said, there are so many opportunities in large departments, and we all bring so much to the department. And so it is nice to work in a department that allows you to sometimes, work in areas that it's a good fit. Lots of opportunity there. And what I invited you here for is to talk about retirement. And you and I have had quite a bit of conversation about that. You and your position of the DPA over the years, you have seen and heard a whole lot of conversation about an individual thinking about retiring, or maybe retiring without thinking about retiring, and the reasons why they're retiring, and then what has happened afterwards. What comes to your mind? What comes to Mata's mind when you think about a first responder retiring?
Probably the number one thing is, when people will call me, because usually they call me with problems, and they retire for the wrong reason. They retire because they're angry. They retire because they're mad at the department, and they're mad at a moment. I mean, it could be something that just happened recently. Maybe they got discipline that they felt was unwarranted. Maybe they got transferred and they felt it was unwarranted. And so they want to throw their hands up and say, you know, I'll show this department, I'm going to retire. And I have to, kind of ride that fence a little bit, because I want to make sure that I'm not speaking out of turn. I'm not there to change people's lives. I just try to make sure they're doing it for the right reason, because once you get to a point, there is a point of no return. This is a huge mistake if you do it for the wrong reasons. And so, you know, I just tried to make sure it's not an emotional decision, that they're giving it some forethought, and it's nothing that has to be made at a moment, you know. And so I tend to like to slow them down a little bit and make sure they're doing it for the right reasons. If they're ready, I am all about, if it's your time, you know, it's your time. And I mentioned this the other day, you know, I've probably given, 60, 70 retirement badges, if not more. And I always ask everybody the same question. And it seems silly that I ask them all the same question, but they all tell me the exact same answer. You know, I ask them, so how do you know when it's time? Because I'll have people who retire at 15 years, 18, 20, 25, 40 or more. As I've gotten older, that question has become more, more rapid. How do you know? And they all say the same thing. Mike, you just wake up one day and you're okay with saying it. And it's just time to go. And you just know. And it's not something they can really explain. It's not something that they say that they prepared for over, a specific step of time. It's just, they wake up one day and they say, okay, it's time for me to start figuring out how I'm going to leave, because it's time. And they're right. And that's how I felt, I just had opportunities come, and, cops don't like change, and I'm just like them. I don't like change. But I had to trust the fact that I thought I've done well here. And I believe there's more out there than just being a Dallas officer. I'll always love being a Dallas officer. And I will say it's always going to be the best part of my professional life. But I do believe there's something more out there. And if those opportunities come, I think if you're ready, if you're financially ready, it's a risk. And when I say risk, I say really more of an emotional risk than a financial risk. But it's something worth taking if you're okay with it. And that's how I felt. And I said, this is something I want to do. I need to rejuvenate my life. And I thought a new chapter, a new goal is what I needed. Because I think I've kind of topped out in the profession I'm in right now. I don't want to promote. No, don't want to do that. And I've done quite a bit. And being the president for the association, I don't want to be like past presidents who've been here 10, 15 years. I don't think that's good for organization, any organization, not just a DPA. Every organization needs a new face, a new voice over a period of time. And I think it's just my time. So that's kind of where I'm at. And again, like you said, I think, and kind of how we started this real quick, it's the hardest thing is when somebody tells me that they're ready to go, but normally I can look at them in the face and I can tell they're happy, they're healthy about what they're doing. And then I just kind of ask them what you ask them. I'm sure when you talk to them, are you ready? And if you're ready, then should be an easy decision. Really should be.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's questions that people should be able to answer. And, it isn't that you engrave it in stone. It isn't that you say 6 years from now, I will be doing this and only this and nothing but this, because you never know. I mean, things change. But I like the word plan, but I also want to use the word adaptability and flexibility involved in that. Because even the officer that looks at you and is excited and has, they've made their investments and they've worked on their marriage and their children are excited that they're retiring and they have friends in the community and they know where they want to live and they know that they want to do a little part-time job on the side and they have a trip planned, all that stuff still happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stuff still happens. I don't think anybody thought that the lockdown was going to happen 3 years ago. And there's people that built a business ready for when they retired that was in the travel industry. Guess what they didn't do that first year after they retired? That fell through. Yeah. And there's so many divorces after retirement. And, sometimes it's because it was just in the cards and nobody saw it, they didn't bother to fix it. Other times they just realize they don't really like their spouse anymore. They just don't like each other or whatever. So many things happen right after somebody retires. One of our mutual friends and previous coworker, spouse committed suicide. That was not part of the plan.
Right.
That was not part of the plan. But my goal is for individuals to leave with hope and knowledge of what matters to them. And that when you're leaving in your 40s and 50s and early 60s, you have 10, 20, 30 years left of living.
You hit it right on the head. Yeah.
So, yeah. And
it's not a time to sit in a chair and just watch TV and die.
No.
Because that's what you'll do.
Yeah. Heck, it becomes so overwhelming for people. And I say this with the utmost respect of individuals who are right now sitting in a chair watching TV. You just get overwhelmed and you get this story in your head of, what have I done? I've made a mistake, yada, yada, yada. And they don't know what to do. And it obviously should take some action. But one of the things that comes up a lot is if somebody goes to work after they retire, there are individuals that say, oh, well, you didn't plan your money too well, right? And it's like, well, maybe that is the reason. If they need money, isn't the smartest thing they can do go to work? I mean, that's what Dave Ramsey always says. You need money, go to work. But think of all yourself, myself, other individuals. We got a lot of life left in us. We going to work afterwards? What do you say to that, to officers who are going to work after they retire?
Well, and I think you kind of hit it a little bit on the head. Also, people don't understand. It's not just that people are going to work maybe for a little extra spending cash. You go to work sometimes because you need the outside emotional stimuli of conversations. Again, some people can sit in a chair and watch TV for years and they're going to be okay. But we were created, however you want to say we were created, but I think we were created as social beings. And especially if you've always been a social being, that's part of who you are. That's part of your life. That's part of your own characteristics. And so if you completely shut that off and you stop that, you almost are damaging yourself because it's your outlet. It's how you stay healthy. And so like yourself, you went to work at the flower place. I would love to do that too. I'm a big green thumber kind of guy. Sometimes I kill more than I keep healthy, but a lot of it also is I just like interacting with people. So whether I worked at a golf course or I worked at Callaway or I worked as a barista at Starbucks, it's not about the job. And it really isn't even about the money. It's about maintaining that social interaction we have as human beings, which in my opinion, keeps you healthy, keeps you happy. Unfortunately, we have a very high rate of cancer and a very high rate of heart disease, but we also have a very high rate of Alzheimer's. And that can also be your percentages can be lowered if you stay active. Your brain has to work. And so that's what I tell a lot of these folks too, that are also, and they say, oh, I'm done working. I'm never going to work. And I always tell them it's not about the money sometimes, but you've got to keep your brain moving in you. Because if you're not moving, what that saying is, if you're not moving, you're dying. You're one of the two. If grass isn't growing, grass is dying. If trees aren't growing, trees are dying. We are no different. We're human beings. And so, I think it's very difficult also, like you said, with your spouse, because I know, you always hear, my wife and I, or my husband and I, we're going to retire together. And we're just going to travel. We're going to do all this. Okay, well, now you have two professional lives that are completely changing. And so I'm not telling people not to do that. But again, we spoke about this before we started this. You've got to learn to like each other again. I don't want to say everybody were roommates, but when you had these schedules, you passed each other. When you had kids, one was going one direction to the soccer games, the other one was going the other direction to the ballet recitals. And you saw each other in passing. And every once in a while, maybe you got to sleep in the same bed together if you had, similar schedules or whatever. but you've got to learn how to enjoy each other again. You've got to learn to be able to have conversations again. And I like to tell people that you got to learn how to date again.
Yeah.
And and if you don't have that outside stimuli helping you do those things, then again, like you said, there's a lot of divorces that happen. And that's because they didn't prepare for the emotional side of retiring as much as their financial side. They always worried about how much dollars they had in the account, but not how much emotional dollars they had in the account.
And it's very unfortunate, but it is true. And I have always, well, we named our company To the Point because I like to get to the point of things. And one of the reasons why I'm continuing to serve first responders, I mean, I retired after 30 years. My husband still works for the department. The problems that you and I have been talking about tend to be magnified for individuals in the first responder world. And a lot of that comes down to our identity, not ego. And it's the media will take it that it's ego, but we're going to separate ego from identity. And from the first day of whatever training you go to, you are already being told that you are different and you no longer fit in to society for whatever reason, right? For whatever reason. And I know that you, as an individual, I know that you have worked very hard to stay in community. I know you've worked very hard to stay a member in the community through volunteer work, through your church, through your children, through your wife, through your neighborhood and stuff like that. But a lot of first responders don't have that. It's not set up for them. They didn't realize to set it up for themselves for whatever reason, the job that they're doing, whatever reason. So whenever they go to retire, they have to deal with not everything everybody else retires with, but also of, I don't belong in society.
Right.
I'm too damaged. I don't trust people. I don't like people. They all lie. They don't trust me. You know, the marriage, the parent-child relationship has really suffered because of the shift work, the extra jobs, the communications that you just shut down. You know, a lot of our households, we're dealing with PTSD. We're dealing with, extreme trauma. That is not just when you're in the squad car or the Tahoe or the office. It comes home with you. It also follows you into retirement. So all of the things that you and I know we need to do, sometimes it's just hard. It's just hard. Notice I didn't say impossible. I just said it's just hard. And anybody who is willing to listen to the words that you shared or look at examples of individuals who have retired, and of course we only see the outside, but look at some examples and say, what is that person doing that I'm not doing? You know, well, I don't really want to volunteer. Well, if you know that that can help make you healthy, keep growing, like you said, fight off some of the diseases that you mentioned. And also, and I hate I hate the numbers of this, but we are a group that kills themselves a lot in retirement.
Yep.
We have the military, first responders, we have it rough. We have some extra that we have to deal with. And yeah, so if people can think of that beforehand, maybe some spouses are listening to this right now and could say, hey, maybe I need to give my spouse a little bit of grace. Maybe I need to open up these conversations. Maybe I need to be aware of this. And again, it's not impossible. It's not impossible. Is there anything else that you would like to share with first responders while I have you?
Yeah, and I think another thing in preparing themselves, and it's not just for retiring, but as you spent years on the department, we were not created. I don't believe mankind was created to see the things that officers see and firefighters see on a daily basis. We're not supposed to see dead babies. We're not supposed to see battered wives. We're not supposed to see people killed from gunshots or mangled bodies from car accidents, and then take that home and sleep on a pillow and think you're going to get 8 solid hours, great, with no issues. That latches on you. That's emotional baggage that you have to learn how to deal with. And I think as officers, we deal with it because we work our job, we go work our extra job, we go get our 4 hours of sleep, and we'll do it again. And we're just always on that wheel chasing the cheese. And then when your life starts to slow down, you don't forget those things. You know, I know right now I can ask you the first dead child you've ever seen, and it will come right up in your head because it's cemented in your memory. You know, it's that emotional baggage that you can't lose. And nope, and it's going to be very hard, if impossible, to ever forget it. But you have to be able to cope with it because you have a whole lot more time on your hands when you start to retire. You've got a lot more time to think, and those memories are going to come back to you.
They do.
And that just makes you human and makes you natural. But how you deal with those things is what is important. So I'm very glad that the department through Chief Garcia has really spearheaded mental health, mental wellness, because we have broken so many men and women.
Yeah.
And just by the profession, they are broken. And then when they snap, and I'm not making any excuses for poor behavior, but when they snap, a lot of times it has more to do with just a bad decision they made, you know, or they shouldn't have been drinking and driving, or they shouldn't have gotten that fight with their spouse and pushed her, or she pushes him, or whatever. That's the boiling point. But we allowed it to get to something because we gave them no option. We gave them no opportunity. And believe it or not, it's not the younger officers. The younger officers have grown up in therapy. It's nothing new for them. It's that 15 to 30 to 40-year officer who still has that stigma of, if I seem weak if I ask for help.
Yeah.
I seem weak if I, let somebody know that I'm not feeling okay. So I'm just ecstatic that our department and departments across the country are starting to realize what we are doing to our own. Because like you said, we have officers that are committing suicide left and right. And, it boggles my mind that they commit suicide and all of us look at each other and say, I never would have guessed. I never would have guessed.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of that is because we don't ride two-man anymore. They're all one-man elements. So I thought it was better when we were two-man elements because you had the opportunity to, scream at them rather than your wife or your husband. And you had that other person going, hey, Mike, I think you're kind of being a jerk here. You need to think about what you're doing. All right. You're about to say something really dumb. So it was that in-car therapy session that we used to give each other that we have gotten away from. So, my biggest thing that I really want, the biggest message I want to get out to officers who are contemplating leaving is, take your time when you make that decision. Number one, everything has consequences, good, bad, or indifferent. And so you need to take your time and think about those consequences. And the last one, you have to communicate to your family on what your expectations are after retirement, going through retirement, what you're going to do in that time of retirement, because you might have a wife who thinks, hey, you're going to be my stay-at-home partner from this point forward. And in your mind, your plan is, no, I want to go do something else because I'll drive myself crazy and I'll drive her crazy. I know me. I know what I'll do. And so everybody just needs to know what you're doing, and namely yourself. So, and if you're not a people person, which a lot of cops aren't because we're alpha males, and that's why I never understood why cops like to go to Vegas. Everything we hate is in Vegas, but yet they go all the time. Makes no sense to me. But be comfortable in your own skin and take some risks. Go out and get in a community group. Go to the, Big Brothers Big Sisters program is huge. Be a volunteer referee in a basketball or baseball. Get yourself back into community. We love to have a little bit of air of authority. Okay, find something that is a happy medium so that you can still have a little bit of authority, so you can kind of wean yourself back into the community, but that you also are feeling you're giving back, because every single officer who's hired says the exact same thing. I became a police officer because I want to help people. Why does it end when you take the uniform off? It doesn't have to. And you'll get as much, if not more, when you're doing it as an everyday citizen than when you did it as a police officer.
Yeah, absolutely. It was funny. A lot of the female officers that I've been interviewing for this series are their spouse, their husbands are also officers and stuff. And most of them have been retired for 3 or more years now. I think I'm the most recent retiree out of all of us. And we all have recognized the same thing. And you've heard this and you've said it, and it is a very true statement. We just need to add something to that. we always say, just come home. Just do whatever it takes to come home. I have stood in front of details for years and said, do whatever it takes. We will take care of anything else afterwards. Just live through the situation. Well, I've noticed that, me, because I was kind of always in the middle of stuff out on the streets, and then Todd being in SWAT our whole entire time we've known each other, there are times, well, many, many, many times that we are laying in bed and we are too messed up, jacked up, screwed up, basically in survival mode in that bed together. And we're like, well, we made it home. That's all good. And then you got up the next day, or if you didn't get a call out in the middle of the night, or I didn't get called in the middle of the night, and you just do it over and over and over and over again. And it wasn't until last year, Todd and I are participating in the Taya and Chris Kyle Foundation, their communication training and courses for first responders and police officers. And it wasn't until I was sitting in one of the classes as a member of the class that I realized we're kind of messed up.
Right.
We got a lot to deal with. And then we were filling out the thing for the podcast that Joe King and all the fellows do, the awesome podcast that they do, absolutely changing lives. Todd and I were both writing down all of our events, our critical incidents, our situations. And we were just writing and writing and writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. And I remember looking up at it and thinking, how are we even married? How are we even alive? How are we members of this community? And then I realized, well, first of all, because God has us, right? I mean, he put us here for this. But boy, it was such an eye-opener to me of the kindness and the grace that we need to give each other. And it made me more dedicated to wanting to help first responders and their families retire.
Right.
Because we got years of stuff. We got years and years and years of stuff, and I loved being an officer, just like you always say. You always stress how much you like being an officer and still like being an officer. But yeah, the things you mentioned, a big yes.
It's and I think it's even worse for these officers nowadays, because let's be honest, our worst, greatest fears was getting fired or getting killed. Those are your worst, greatest fears. And
Not anymore.
Those are your two. And now it's getting fired, getting killed, or going to prison.
Going to prison.
And because, we have always thought, look, the only time a cop's going to go to prison is when we remember cops, when they were just dirty, when they deserved every bit of going to prison. But now you have officers who are worried about doing the right thing in a wrong period of time, at the wrong flashpoint, and now you're worried about going to prison.
And the spouses worry about that too. The spouses and the children do.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt.
How do you prepare for that? How do you cope for that? Because we can all cope for, it's obviously harder when it happens, but we've all accepted the fact that we might not come home. Our wives have accepted it. Our kids, unfortunately, maybe haven't accepted it, but they've understood it. How do you prepare for the fact that you might go to prison for doing nothing but saving a life or saving your own life? And it just looks bad when violence and the killing of any person never looks good. And you're going to put your future in the hands of either somebody who's a political partisan and is trying to make a statement, and then possibly 12 people in a jury box who don't even have a realistic expectation of what your job is. So my hat goes off to these young officers, because, we'll all say they'll never know what it's like to be a real cop, like when we were, back in the day. And I think there's a little truth to that, because we were more proactive crime fighters at that time. They don't want that right now. But on the flip of that, they're risking way more. Way more.
It's terrifying. It's truly terrifying. Oh, that's a whole nother topic. I can go on and on and on about that. Yeah. And yeah, it's, you're exactly right. It's terrifying. And it's just, I wonder what that is going to be doing to these young officers and their spouses and their marriages. And it's always a joke about, first responder marriages don't last very long. What I know now, if I had known this 30 years ago, maybe I wouldn't have been divorced. If we knew what to look for, if we knew when to ask for help, when we saw things happening, we saw two people who couldn't communicate because we are, so busy communicating this other way. I wonder, I wonder about that a lot. So,
I've been divorced too. I think all of us who have been divorced and, obviously you and I both are happier where we are today, and we have beautiful kids and all this that we're very thankful for that came out of that second marriage or whatever. But I think all of us will look at our first marriage, and I think we would all agree that there are definitely things. I know there are things I could have done better. I know I was not a very good communicator. And I think a lot of it is very difficult being married to a spouse who's also a police officer. I mean, you have two alpha males in a house. And both parties need to learn when it's time to give and when it's time to take, and be okay with that. And that's difficult. So, when a lot of these married couples are both police officers, it's double the trouble, double the pleasure, and everything you look at it, right?
Yeah.
So all this baggage we're sitting here saying that we carry, well, you can just times that by 2 because it's in your home now. But again, I think it's been an amazing profession. I know for both of us. I'm glad we both are making it through this with a healthy mind, somewhat healthy mind, but a emotionally very healthy heart. And so that's when I tell these guys when they retire, that's really all you can hope for, is that you leave with a full heart and an emotionally sound mind. You're going to be okay.
Now I have the big question. And this is the question that Todd likes me to ask all of our guests. And how does Mike Mata want to be remembered?
I would hope that that I changed lives. And when I say changed lives, I hope that my almost 30 years on this department, that some kid grew up to be a better person than who they were going to be. I hope that some family is still together when they were traveling down the road not to be. I hope that, police officers on this department can look back and say that I helped them survive in some way, especially my years at the academy. I hope I taught them skills that help save their life or help them de-escalate a situation to where everybody went home. Because I always say it's not we always talk about cops going home. We really need to rethink that and say it's about everybody going home. Because to me, that is the best mark you can live upon your career, is that you saved way more lives than you ever had the possibility of taking. So if you ask me how I want to be remembered, I know, fortunately there'll be a picture on my picture will be on the wall with the other 13 people who run this organization. But just when my name comes up, I hope people say, you know what, that he was a good guy and he did a good job, and he was he helped people. I think I'll be okay with that.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you so very much. We will have your contact information in the comments, and then also on the show notes, so that people can, if they want to reach out to you, that will be available to them. But thank you so very much. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your heartfelt conversation today.
Well, I appreciate it. And when me and the wife make it up to Durango, we'll give you a call. We'll meet for coffee and a little day of fishing. How about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Take care, Kim.